Hello and welcome to Verum Fabula Fellowship Podcast. I'm Wes Mullins.
And I'm Randy Hardman, and we will be your hosts today. It is our goal to bring you content that cultivates and enriches your daily interactions and encourages the refinement of character and intellect. The terrain we cover ranges from literature to philosophy to theology. It is our hope that through these lenses we can offer insight to the human experience and the human condition that is empowering and transformative.
Verum Fabula Fellowship is located in the beautiful town of Wilmore, Kentucky, and the podcast takes place at Drinklings Roastery on Main Street. This is also where the fellowship meets regularly and where members are encouraged to present new thoughts and ideas, engage with interesting and important topics in discussion seminars, and interact with and listen to keynote speakers invited in to challenge us intellectually and spiritually. It is a true intellectual collective. Please rate this podcast on iTunes, and if we've said things that are helpful, be sure to tell your Lewis and Tolkien friends about us. With no more ado, here we go. Further up and further in. We've already begun.
Yeah, well, there we go.
Hey, this is the train's coming, Randy says. Hi, everybody. This is the Jack and Beren show. I'm Wes Mullins.
I'm Randy Hardman.
And we're here today to just meander and go down the quarantine path for the last almost a month now. Right?
Yeah.
We love it.
That's the train.
We are like 100 yards from the train tracks, and
We are what, six feet away.
but
from
we
each
are
other?
6 feet apart.
We are
That's
2 yards.
Yeah,
away,
so we are quite
socially distanced podcast.
socially distanced podcast, and we're sitting here in the gorgeous Drinklings Roastery and Cafe. I'm having what am I having this morning?
It's a Tanzanian peaberry.
Tanzanian peaberry. It is fantastic. So all those out there listening, if you want to come get some coffee online from Randy, I recommend the Oxford blend. It's my absolute favorite, maybe of all time. And it's this Tanzanian
Peaberry.
Peaberry is it's really good too.
It was C.S. Lewis's favorite coffee, actually.
Really?
No, I'm making that up.
I was like, damn. It's like, well, he like.
I don't think he was a coffee kind of guy.
I was getting ready to say, but he could have had a favorite coffee.
I think if he was coffee, he would have been a sludge coffee kind of guy.
He probably would have been.
Kind of like with his wine and beer and stuff like that.
He said you could never get a book big enough or a cup of tea big enough for him.
Yep.
So
he was a snob there.
Yeah, he was, which is awesome. And I went to hang out with Walter Hooper. He kept, you want more tea? He man just drinks a ton of tea.
Oh yeah.
And
English breakfast.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I like tea myself. A hot drink. There was this would you rather thing my kids were doing. Would you rather eat cold food for the rest of your life or never have a cold drink? And I was like, never have a cold drink. I could literally drink hot drinks all the time.
Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love iced drinks, but hot drinks are my thing.
Yep.
I just love the hot drinks. Well, we've had a lot happen since COVID-19 has wrecked the entire world.
This will be one for the archives.
Yeah.
One day when they're
Yeah.
archaeologically digging through the digital world of this, they'll stumble upon this and we'll find ourselves in some obscure footnote.
Yeah, the Jack and Beren show, COVID-19, is it April 7th?
It's April 8th.
April 8th.
It's April 8th.
Wow. It is just
Flying by. It's
been about 3 or 4 weeks now since we've been in self-quarantine.
Yep.
Basically, everything's shut down except for what is called quote-unquote essential work, which if you listen to Mike Rowe, he says that all work is essential because it fuels the economy.
Oh yeah. Thankfully, coffee shops are still considered essential right now. So
we like that the coffee shops are essential. But it's been interesting. My work has not been really interrupted. It's been kind of cool. I do a lot of remodeling, so I'm working either with just individuals or actually just vacant places, and
Yep.
so I've been able to continue to work and make money, and that's been nice. But for the rest of the world, everyone's sort of shut down, locked in with the kids. I know you were saying, Randy, that it's you have 3.
I have 3.
and it's just
one of which is a year and a half. So that makes it a little bit more challenging.
Yeah,
because he doesn't sit still. Yesterday we found him locked inside the chicken coop. So my oldest might have locked him inside the chicken coop, but he was locked inside the chicken coop nonetheless. So that's
with the chickens.
With the chickens.
Oh wow!
So he wants to be a chicken.
Okay.
We're fairly certain at this point.
Yeah.
So,
man.
COVID-19 adventures.
Yeah, that is crazy. Locked inside the chicken coop. I have to. You would think living out on 30 acres of land that, I don't know, probably when I was growing up, maybe when you as well, anytime I got a chance to go outside, I was outside.
Oh, yeah.
Like we came back for lunch, and we came back for dinner, and we came back when it was too dark.
Right.
But basically, when I went to my grandmother's house, we just went out, and we spent 10 hours out running through the hills.
Yep.
And I cannot get my kids to go out on 30 acres of land. They're like, I'm bored. I was like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yep. Oh, I know, 100%, man. You know what? That's when you turn around and you suggest that you have chores for them to do if they're going to remain bored, and suddenly that disappears. But
well, I tell them all the time that ennui is a great thing, because suddenly they're bored, and then they find something creative to do, or have something kind of cool happens. My daughter had something, I can't remember what it was, but she said, I probably wouldn't have come to this unless I was bored. And I was like, yes, ennui is a good thing when you actually have to sit and go, okay, what can I create to do?
Right.
In this notion. So, yeah, it's been a crazy time just for the entire world. I don't think since probably the world wars that the world has been shut down like this globally.
And that's a really interesting thing I've thought a lot about is, we've been in military conflicts, and we've had global issues, Cold War, and stuff like that have raged, but they do keep invoking all of these World War II-ish measures, and that's just really interesting. It kind of shows the proximity of World War II to our generation,
Yeah.
Think about some of these people, too, that, are over 100 years old and were born and survived the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Then lived through World War II, and now they're, some of them are living through and dealing with COVID and coming out the other end of it. So they've lived through 2 pandemics.
Crazy. What a life.
It does show like the closeness of historical events, really, that we've not had to do this since World War II, and yet there are still tens of thousands of people that remember us invoking some of these same measures.
Yeah. It's interesting as well that I was thinking about, before this happened, the economy was statistically one of the greatest we'd seen in the history of pretty much the world, like as far as like our stock market and the joblessness rate and all these things. Like the economy was really good. And I was thinking about not putting your trust in the world, not putting your trust in the things that we've created as humans, because in an instant,
Yep.
I mean, we see in a month the economies have been ravaged all over the world.
Yep.
Like strong economies, capitalist economies that were just thriving now are screeching to a halt in a matter of 4 weeks.
Yep.
If I put all of my hope and trust in the stock market and these things, I'd be a wreck right now. And you see why in the Great Depression people just said, I'm done. I've lost my entire wealth. It's over.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things to me is that we've definitely fallen in with this kind of progressivist worldview again that was raging during the early part of the 20th century when all this stuff happened as well, right? And it was this whole like humanist project that said we can take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Technology, modernization is our savior. And then you have, of course, the flu, and you have 2 world wars that just kind of knock the legs out from under people. And this is the same kind of deal as I think about ever since the 1970s, where we started really pushing vaccines and so forth for, all these viruses. You got measles, you got polio, you got things like that. And we've kind of decided culturally, I think, that we have the resources to control these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And therefore, will never be susceptible to them in the same way that like we were in 1918. I mean, you think about how many people had no idea that there was a Spanish flu, right? They're kind of like,
right.
what was that? It's often called the forgotten flu, or the forgotten pandemic. And it does show, like I've thought about that a lot this week, is that it's kind of like the big muscular guy who's, thinks that he's strong and capable and everything like that, but then his legs get knocked out from under him, Or somebody that's in complete perfect health that thinks they're going to live forever and all of a sudden winds up with a cancer, that just takes them down. And I think it shows like maybe we have misplaced our own self-confidence that we think that we can control this. Even like things like Ebola, right? Most of us think a rural African virus that it got to our shores and we stopped it, and then there's this one and we don't know what to do.
Yeah, it also reminds me, there was a book called The Seal of God, and it was about a Navy SEAL who became a Christian as he was becoming SEAL Team 1.
Yeah.
And he actually said during Hell Week that you saw these guys that were the specimens, the physical specimens, that you thought, if anybody's going to be a Navy SEAL, this guy's going to be a Navy SEAL. And they went through some grueling things. One of the things was that you go out naked onto the shore, you lock arms, and then you back into the waves.
Yep.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, and the water's like 50 degrees, and you come back out, and you back down the water until you're under the water completely, and you come back out, and you do that for hours on end. He said, and what you would see is these big specimen of guys that you thought are going to make it. They had this bell in the middle of camp, and when you decided you had enough, you went and rung the bell. The physical specimen guys were always the first ones to ring the bell, and some of them couldn't last a few hours of it.
Yeah.
And they were like, come out.
Yeah.
And you see some scrawny guy that you're like, this guy won't last a week. He becomes a Navy SEAL and goes on to be decorated and do all these crazy things.
Yeah.
It's just,
It's a weird paradox that we're kind of in right now. But yeah, it's a weird paradox that we're in right now, and it'll be interesting to kind of see just historically how we look back on this period, and honestly whether we do anything worthwhile with this right now. So
yeah. So yeah, we're sitting here in Drinklings Roastery, and we knew we'd have interruptions this morning because Randy is essential to the Wilmore community to keep them going. The coffee shop actually is really good. So if it sounds a little disjointed,
it's because it is.
It is. People are coming in getting coffee, and it's fantastic. Because this podcast is brought to us by Drinklings Roastery. I mean, we actually get to have it here, and he supplies me with the coffee as we do the podcast. So,
Tanzania and Peaberry.
It's Peaberry. So you're a roaster. So let's just talk about coffee for a second, because this is sort of what brought us together was coffee. So this Tanzanian Peaberry, tell me about it.
So we have a number of staple coffees that we do. I think you mentioned the Oxford blend is kind of your favorite. It's our house coffee. It's kind of the one that in connection with Drinklings and the Inklings, like it was a homage. We actually have a Cambridge blend as well. So we thought
it's probably not as good.
It's not as good. It's definitely the second of the two of them. But one of the beans is the same.
Right.
The other one is a different one. So there is some continuity that's there.
Right.
Too.
Lewis went to both schools.
Yeah. So we put some thought into why we're calling them what we are. But this Peaberry that we get, we have staple coffees, and then we try and do some rotational ones. And this one, if you learn about coffee enough, you'll know that there's different varieties, kind of across the world, not just differences in like Colombia and Brazil and stuff like that, but there's all these little micro differences as well. Peaberry, it comes from Tanzania. It's not the only coffee that comes from Tanzania, but it's a variety that comes from there, and it's just an undeveloped coffee bean that gets pulled before it's really done, and it creates this just very unique. So they're almost like little pinballs.
It's crazy.
As coffee, so it's not what you would exactly like peas, basically,
and it's just very different sweet coffee. I don't think most coffees you would want to be undeveloped, but this one really is good.
Because I'm not big on fruity coffees.
Yep.
But this is actually really good. Now, I actually was in Ethiopia for a while, which is considered, the home of coffee, from Kaldi and his goats.
Yep.
And I watched, they would roast it right in front of you. You go to somebody's house and they would just get these green poppy beans and they'd roast them and crush them. And
it's the way we used to do this, man. I mean, we're just talking about World War II, right?
Right.
And some things that really went the way of the buffalo, after World War II is baking your own bread, roasting your own coffee, like some of those kind of things that all of a sudden they changed in order to support the troops, so they started mass producing these things that we've never gone back then. So it's been cool because we've seen a little uptick in people that have just wanted to buy green beans from us instead of doing some home roasting.
Okay.
You want to support local roasters and stuff like that over big commercial chains a lot of the time, but we want people to enjoy the craft of it as well, and so I encourage anybody that's listening to go get a little popcorn popper and at least do it sometimes. It's fun.
Yeah, we enjoy that. And so one of the things my wife and I, being small business entrepreneurs, have done during this COVID time is actually go out and support local businesses.
Yeah.
And I understand the social distancing, but we've done curbside. And so we have a Sabbath day we do on Mondays, and we go out and support local businesses, whether it's our favorite kombucha shop or our favorite restaurants, favorite coffee shops. And it's just been, it's a way to show solidarity in this time of going, hey, we're going to get through it together.
Yep.
And we want you guys to be around when this thing lets up.
That's our hope. That's why we're putting pause on this thing.
That's why we've been stopping here and there and pausing this. So,
what are you going to take away from this whole thing? If there's one thing, I think,
for me, it's kind of the takeaway that I've been having the whole time is there's hope.
Yeah.
In adversity. No matter where it is, you can find the joy. We have a customer coming?
We do.
All right, so we're going to pause this for a second. I'll give you my answer in just a second.
Answer?
Yeah, so my answer actually came to me a few mornings ago. I woke up and the notion that 98% of people are going to recover from this.
Yeah.
It made me think. Most of us were distressed and anxious before all this happened. We thought the world was falling apart before this even happened. We thought the economy was crashing. We looked for the bad.
Right.
And I think for me, what I've started doing is saying, in life, if I start looking for the good, I bet I can find it. Sherlock Holmes finds the clues no one else finds because he's looking for it.
Right.
So if I spend my time looking for the good, and this notion of my life that I've always looked for the other shoe to drop. I've looked for the bad thing to drop. This is good. Okay, I can't enjoy this because the bad's coming. What if I flipped that around and said, oh, the bad's here, but wait, the good's coming, because you can't have one without the other in that sense. And so I'm in this tragedy, or I'm in this pandemic, or I'm in this bad spot, or I'm in this financial strait. Good's coming.
Yeah.
And if I begin to focus on that, then I'm going to see more good because I'm looking for it. But if I want to focus on the bad, man, there's always bad. People were depressed. I mean, depression was on the rise in America, and it was one of the greatest times in human history.
Right, yeah.
And so for me, I'm going, I want to begin to look for the good because the bad's always going to get worse, but there's got to be good. And we think about Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and I've been to concentration camps. And what I saw there, it was so hard for me to visualize the tragedy, because there are flowers blooming, there are birds singing, and suddenly these concentration camps are actually beautiful places now.
Right.
And it was so it's like, so good does
There's
come.
some sort of,
it does get better.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm just going, what good's going to come out of this? Looking for the good, new technologies, new social things are going to come out. There's going to be great things that come out of this, even despite there'll be bad things that come out as well. So I want to focus on the good, and I'm excited.
Yeah. I think unfortunately a lot of our anxiety just comes from the unknown, and
right.
the reality is with this, if 98% of people are going to recover from this, they're also speaking as if most everybody's going to get this, And you hear stories about people that are young, perfect health that end up, dying from this. I think it's just as that uncertainty of, if I catch this today, I don't know that I'll be here in 2 weeks,
Right.
That is really the most anxious part of this for everybody, is it's just this unknown.
Well, I've gone through cancer, so for me, it's...
Yeah, and I think that's similar to me, too. I mean, like, when you've had to look at this as a reality in your life before, it gives some meaning, I don't speak to what I experienced, but years ago, I pretty much had to look at my own the reality of, like, tomorrow's not promised us, and you learn to just accept that, and there might be some grief and stuff like that. There's grief that's there for me, and
Absolutely.
especially when you have kids and stuff like that, is to think I could be gone tomorrow and I'll miss out on that part of their life, or what could that do? But I think so much of our culture is just wrapped up in this fear. And what I think even Lewis called this, like, just, I don't know the term that he called it, but he talked a lot about our perpetual immortality conviction. That we really believe, and this speaks to the fact that we're designed to be, and we are immortal. Is that we have this kind of inner sense that evolution has not just kind of settled into us. This, like, you're the normalcy of death. Like, we should all expect it, and yet it's strange enough that most of us feel like we should be continuing on after this, or there's some sort of, like, living forever, that's there.
Yeah, I think there's two sides. I know there's this quote going around by Lewis talking about we live in the atomic age, and all these great travesties are happening all around us, but yet we continue.
Yeah.
And so the human spirit will continue to survive during this. And so I think on a naturalistic level that still works, that we're sort of resilient. But then the notion of we're immortal and we shouldn't be affected by this. If you, actually, at least by Nigel comes to mind, where he says, I could have gone a different way. It wouldn't have been better.
Yeah.
It would have just been different.
It would have just been different.
And so if I'd have suffered the tragedies in my life, if I'd succumbed to cancer, my life wouldn't have been better or worse. It would have just, my history would have been different.
Yeah.
And so I think that's for us to know that we're afraid of missing out, that FOMO of, like, if this happens, this is gone, or this will be taken away. And it's a horrible way to live.
Yeah, because we're eventually going to be there anyways.
Right.
Like, it doesn't, pandemic is here today, but tomorrow it may be cancer. The day after that, it may be military conflict. The day after that, it may just honestly be the flu, or be there's different things, and we're always walking on that tightrope, and most of us think that we're walking on a bridge,
Yeah.
securely strapped and everything, and it's just like, no, like, humanity has always been walking on a tightrope. In fact, probably now more than anything, we really are walking on a bridge, but humanity, for the bulk of human history, has had to recognize, like, there is no tomorrow that is guaranteed for you or anybody else.
We've changed the fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood, which a lot of these fairy tales were written, especially, I was thinking about this in a way, but the fairy tale was written to take a complex idea and make it relatable, the fantastical, the unknown, the uncertain, and actually give it a face.
Right.
And so Little Red Riding Hood, the original story, everybody dies but the big bad wolf. And the Black Plague is going on during this time, and there's lots of death. And so children encounter death more frequently and younger. And so in order to have them understand death, they made a big bad wolf. It's going to take grandma. It may take you, it may take someone else, but you still have to go through the woods. You still have to go on with life, and you still have to go to grandmother's house, even though death may be waiting for you. But it was a way to get kids to grapple with, oh, this might come for me.
Yeah.
But how do I still live? How do I go on? And we've changed it to the big bad wolf's defeated. We've conquered death, and we've conquered pandemics. We've conquered everything. and then people don't know how to handle when when life falls apart. This is an interesting segue here, but this is the participation trophy generation, where everybody wins. What came out of that is actually that train. That train is awesome. It's a staple. What happens is that if everybody wins and you lose, the stigma of losing stings so much worse. What they found was cheating actually has gone up in school.
Yep.
The more that everybody wins.
Yep.
Because suddenly a kid's like, well, if I fail and everybody's passing, I'm a way bigger loser now, and so I need to cheat to win. Before, if the standards were higher, and there was a definite winners and losers based on metrics,
right.
The stigma was there, but we've not alleviated the stigma by dumbing everything down and lowering the bar. We've not alleviated the stigma at all.
Right.
It's still there. So
that was one of Lewis's points in Abolition of Man, wasn't it? That listen, we can't do this thing where everybody gets admitted into the schools and into these disciplines and whatever.
Yeah.
You know, of course, he's talking about education. There is that you do need people that can excel, and there are just people that they're not built for that. And I think we've kind of believed maybe this is a very American thing, and I don't know. Sometimes I fall on one side or the other with this, depending on what it is. I'm never that parent who wants to ever tell his child that no, you can't be president of the United States. Because obviously we also live in weird times where anybody can be president of the United States. But at the same time, there are. The participation trophy kind of thing just sets up a whole lot of other feelings and expectations and ideas of perfection and shame and stuff like that can come along with that as well. I think we need to find a way to encourage people that if you try, you can succeed and you can fall into these different brackets, right? But you have to put that effort into that.
Right.
It's not an automatic thing,
Something else that came to my mind as we were talking today is learning during wartime. One of Lewis's essays, sermons he talked on. So World War II is going on, and the people were saying, how dare you go to school and learn and study classics while the world is burning?
Right.
And he said, it's important that you study the classics because if most of the men are dying and most of the people, most of the intellectuals at this age who are learned are dying, who's going to carry that on if you're not the ones taking that up?
Yeah.
And he says there'll never be a peaceful time. There'll never be a good time to ever learn because someone will always have some crisis that says, well, we can't learn right now because, well, there's a pandemic going on too. Why would you study classics? The world's on fire. He said there's always going to be that notion, so no one would ever learn if we took that approach to education or to things. So that's just
the classics teach us so much about how to live now through these kind of things.
Right.
And that's why we need them.
Yeah, I think that's why it's weird for me because I have this desire to be a Lewis scholar and to go on and teach literature. And for some people, literature and philosophy they're just like these are antiquated and obsolete.
Why? Yeah,
things.
because it doesn't get things done.
It doesn't. But then you realize that these are the foundations by which everything else runs.
So they run. I mean, we're going to start to pour into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. One of the reasons why that book is so powerful is because it helps shape meaning in people's lives. And sometimes if we boil everything down to what you can get done, i.e., military conflict gets things done. Learning during military conflict does not get things done, right? Poetry and myth and narrative and philosophy doesn't get things done, but business and science and all this kind of stuff does. We lose really what helps people survive. I mean, yes, we need people on the front lines of this thing in the healthcare world, developing vaccines and so forth, and yet one of the things that can potentially be hurting people is isolation, separation, depression. You know, this question of meaning. I mean, I think it will be really interesting to see on the other side of this.
Yeah.
What the mental health effects, what the spiritual health effects, and what the social and relational health effects have, or implications have been with this. And that's where all this stuff really helps is when you look at Frankl, it says we were all alone, we were isolated, and you did not know whether you were going to wake up the next day, and yet it was the person who found meaning that was able to survive, not the person, the person who didn't find meaning, they didn't survive. The person who did,
When he said when someone lost hope, within 2 days they were dead.
Yep.
He said you would see them begin to lose hope, and within 2 days they were dead.
Yep.
And then you watch people on the death marches continue. They couldn't have had much muscle on their body. It was just bone and flesh. And yet, even Nietzsche says if you can figure out a why, you can survive anyhow.
Yep.
And so you're talking about science and things, they get things done, but it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable approach to society. Like it doesn't speak to the human experience, just getting things done.
Right.
Because then you go, well, my purpose is to get this thing done. Well, I've got it done. Now what? Like, well, do the next thing. Well, why? It's just it's this infinite regress of, well, there has to be a why somewhere in there. It can't just be do the next thing. It can't be just mechanism all the time.
Yeah.
There has to be some agency. There has to be some, well, why would I do this? And that's where myth takes us. That's where fairy tale takes us. That's where literature and art speak to something that's beyond.
And that is why they are essential.
They are essential.
We're in this whole world of essentials versus non-essentials.
Yes.
I think hopefully one of the things that comes out of this is we recognize the things in the areas in life that really are essential. And I think we are realizing relationships are essential. Hopefully families are recognizing the prioritization of your family is essential over your work. Hopefully there's just a million things that I wish, honestly. And this is one thing that I really hope, I asked, like, what are you going to get out of this? I really hope that our culture takes this time and does some serious reflection about what it is placing its faith in and how it is prioritizing things. And I think, like you said, you'll have that narrative that says now's not the time for that because we're dealing with the front lines of this conflict, this war, right? And yet the reflection has to be there.
Yeah.
The classics have to be there. The pursuit towards meaning has to be there, And so I think now, honestly, is the time, because we don't know whether we're going to have this time again afterwards when we get back in the full swing of things. And if we just go back into the same way that we were doing things before, we have a missed opportunity.
So we'll wrap this up with talking about meditations in a tool shed, because we didn't talk about that. So Lewis says he's in a tool shed and he sees this beam of light. It doesn't illuminate the building, he just sees the light. He's introspective.
Yeah.
And he sees this light and he sees the dust particles flying through it. And then he moves into the light and he sees the sun, the trees, the sky. He sees everything. He moves back from it and he sees the light. Literature allows us to be introspective and also gives us an atmosphere by which we can reason.
Yeah.
And so I see the beam of light as the imaginative atmosphere that the writer creates. Okay, I'm introspective. I'm about to engage in this beam of light. And when I engage in the beam of light, suddenly I see the house, I see the mechanisms, I see the things, but I can also step back and see the beam itself. So Lewis talks about this as looking at the beam and looking along the beam.
Right.
And we need both perspectives in the human. It's imagination and reason. It's agency and its mechanism. We need both those things to come into synthesis, or we're not going to create cultures and societies and literature that will be able to sustain us. If we only have descriptive literature that says, hey, this is what's going on now, if we forget everything but 21st century literature, we are going to screw this up royally and create societies that will implode, and we may have dystopian futures if we forget those things.
Yeah.
So that's
a good word, man. I think that's a good word to end this on, in my opinion. Like reason and imagination, meaning and fact, meaning and knowledge. You know, these things need to both be things that we're, you know, focused on now, because both of them will drive us into the future. To do one without the other, leaves us kind of destitute.
That is the thing that I actually am going to be working on, hopefully for the rest of my career. So we are out. I have been Jack.
I've been Beren.
And we have been here at Drinklings Cafe. Thanks so much for stopping by, guys.